imagine that Ukraine agreed to some sort of a peace deal, and the price, which a lot of people are saying, come on, let the Russians have Crimea, give that up. It's got red ribbons all around it, and all kinds of other scary warnings. So let them have that, and then we can stop the killing. All right, imagine that what happens in 2 or 3 years. Well, over the next 2 or 3 years, if Russia continues to sit in Crimea, they will never take down that big bridge. They will never allow any vessels to go up into the Azov Sea. So even if Mariupol and Verdansk, seaports number 2 and 3 for Ukraine, were liberated, no ships would be able to go in and out of Sea of Azov. Russia has zero credibility for living up to any agreement like that. And then Odessa, there's already 100 ships loaded with grain sitting in Odessa waiting to be inspected by some Russian inspector so that they can head through the straits. So Russia's control of Crimea gives them the ability to dominate all of Ukraine's Black Sea coast. So you've got a country whose economy is based on the export of grain, of rare earth materials, iron ore. So those ports, Odessa, Kherson, Berdansk, and Mariupol, that's key to their economy. So their economy will never be rebuilt. And then after 3 years, Russia will have replenished all their losses. They'll wait for us to lose interest. And then here we go again, where they've got the Black Sea Fleet and on and on and on. So in other words, Ukraine will never be safe. It'll never be secure, and it'll never rebuild its economy as long as Russia occupies Crimea. That's why it's decisive. And I was at Munich Security Conference 2 weeks ago, spoke with a very, very, very senior executive of one of the 2 or 3 largest international investment firms on the planet. He said, if there's no ironclad guarantee for Ukrainian security, that there will be no investment. There's no Marshall Plan. So they can't be secure as long as Russia occupies Crimea. That's why we have to help them get that. And it can be done, but not the way that the Pentagon describes it. It's, what they talk about is basically like a squeegee, that just pushes everything back. Clausewitz would say, focus your main effort on the enemy's center of gravity. In liberation of Crimea is that center of gravity. You do that, all that stuff in Donbass, that happens later. There will be a lot less enthusiasm for so-called separatists fighting there once Crimea has been liberated, because that will unleash changes inside Moscow as well. I overestimated what they could do. I failed to appreciate the depth of corruption in the ministries and how that affects their readiness. And also that they, doing joint things, given all your experience, to be joint is not a natural act. I mean, it took the U.S. Congress to force us, the U.S. military, to become joint. Russia has no culture of jointness. They have not integrated yet their air, land, or maritime forces, thankfully. And they haven't yet figured out, even after 9 years, a coherent command and control structure. Nonetheless, they still felt confident back in 2014 that they could roll into Crimea, which they did. And the West, the collective West, did basically nothing other than we started helping with training of Ukrainian forces. The Black Sea Fleet was pretty much unchallenged in the Black Sea because of their illegal annexation of Crimea. They were able to expand capacity there, make this basically one of these anti-access area denial centers, if you will, along their frontier. So the Black Sea Fleet, which has several vessels capable of launching caliber missiles and other sorts of long-range precision weapons. Crimea is basically an unsinkable aircraft carrier for them. And it's what enabled them to totally disrupt Ukraine's shipping in and out of the Sea of Azov, for example. And because of Montreux, of course, the rest of us non-Black Sea nations are limited with what we can do inside the Black Sea. However, because the Black Sea was never a priority for the department or for NATO, we never had enough requirements for the Navy anyway. So you can't blame Montreux for us not having more naval presence. It just wasn't high enough in the priority list to generate the ships necessary to compete against the Black Sea Fleet. So this is part of the huge advantage that the Russians had there. The second thing And I think this is part of why they felt pretty confident back in February last year that they could roll into Kyiv the way they did in Budapest and Prague during the Cold War, was because we were a mess. The collective we were a mess. This is what failed deterrence looks like. The U.S. had steadily been drawing down forces in Europe. All of our allies, including UK, had been drawing down. The Dutch had given away or sold their last tank. The German Bundeswehr, which used to be the envy of land forces in Europe, was nothing like what it used to be. And so we didn't look unified. There wasn't a sense of urgency. I can't tell you how many times I encountered really good, well-meaning, smart people would kind of roll their eyes when I would talk about, or my boss, General Breedlove, would talk about what needs to be done. And people's like, come on, they're not going to do this. You guys need to settle down. Or I would hear things like Crimea has always been part of Russia. So there's so much false narratives out there that that were not challenged enough because it was very uncomfortable. Because you would have to, if you acknowledge a threat, you got to do something about it. Look, what happened between 2014 and 2022 would be a great course for international relations students or strategic planners and thinkers, because the height of American discourse for much of that time was whether or not to provide Javelin. I mean, Javelin is a man-portable anti-tank system, but that was about the peak of our strategic thinking. And you, I think, correctly sort of tried to separate the fact, the political stuff that was going on that really distracted everybody from why do we care? I mean, what's going on in Ukraine? Why does Ukraine matter to us? And I think, as always, it goes back to what is our political objective? What is our strategic objective for the region? And there was no strategy for the Black Sea region. We would talk about Ukraine as if it was an island. We talk about Georgia as if it's an island. We talk about Turkey as if it's an island. But yet all of these nations are bound together because of their proximity, their being on the Black Sea. So you have to have a regional approach, because that affects everything that Russia does. And so to help Ukraine, and then look, there's a lot of good people, both parties involved in trying to get this right. But what we always lacked was clear direction and guidance, and NATO had no plan for the region. And so in NATO, without an approved plan, you can't do much else. You can't generate requirements. And so there was a lot of, thanks to people like General Breedlove, trying to figure out what can and should we do. And there were some good things that happened. The alliance, for example, did put forward Black Sea air policing, and they were flying out of Romania. So that was an attempt at least to get some combat aircraft in the area. And various U.S. Navy Europe commanders, Jamie Foga was the one with whom I served the longest, did everything he could to get U.S. Navy presence in the Black Sea, but he was competing with other requirements as well.